so we paste in the code here, and fancy transition. Okay, so we've got this, and I will now save as. I'm not sure if it shows the save as window, but if you haven't worked with a text editor yet for this class, basically you can use it if you need to. Maybe you don't have internet access for whatever reason, you need to work on your assignments, you can use Notepad. You just have to save the file with .html at the end. If you forget that, when you open it in a browser, it'll just be all the code that you've written. So if you see that, you just have to go back to your file and make sure you put .html on the end. You can just rename it. It should work in Windows 10, I believe. Okay, so we'll save this as 2.3.html. All right, and then I'll open that in Chrome so that way we can see the output. Perfect. Now I'm just going to add this to the other browser window. Okay. So, oops, wrong. Nope. Yeah, this is the right one. I just need to switch back to this. Okay. Fancy transition. And I'll zoom in here so you guys don't have to use a magnifying glass. Okay. Okay. So I canceled it. That's why it says not a number. NaN is not a number. So some part of an equation output was not a number there, but it's because I canceled it, so it used some weird null value probably. Okay, estimated monthly expenditure for rent payment, 100, 100, 100, 100. Okay, so you got this, and then what did it say? It wanted your program should add the amounts and display the percentage. 2 decimal places and 1 decimal place. Okay, so it looks like you figured out the decimal places. So let me see why that's not working in Replit here. Okay, it says on the first line here. Okay, and as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing, let me copy this. We need to transition from using the JavaScript Replit to, I'll have to, well, hopefully people will see this in the video when they watch it, but we need to use this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript because one use of JavaScript is to add interactivity to web pages and just do all kinds of stuff, but the user interface is HTML and CSS. So we're going to be using JavaScript to basically build some web pages and manipulate them. Okay, so this is 2, 3. All right. Do that. I will make this private, and not to be mean, but I don't want to make it as easy as just copying and pasting the code and submitting. Okay, so, oh, I know what the problem was. The problem is we need this code that you've written needs to be in an HTML file, but you can't process an HTML file unless you are in this the HTML one. Okay, anyway, before I forget what I'm doing, we can paste that, and then we should be able to see it in here. Okay, so let's do 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so so you were saying these variables, okay, you've got %1 through 4. So I don't know how I don't think they were specific about how they want it, so I'll just do it. I'll let you fix the decimal. Well, it's right here. I can do it. Okay. So you're doing rent equals da-da-da, and then your rent variable. Okay. There is one programming standard that I should point out now, and it's good that we're doing this because I can look at this. I'm glad you showed me this, Alex, because this is really good. I just told you guys the wrong thing to program it in, but you've got everything here. But okay, so getting the percents, let's put it just right after the dollar amount. So we will put after here for the line break, put a dash, or a space dash space, and then we will put your what would you call it? Just %1, yeah. So variable names are case sensitive, and variables in JavaScript use first word is lowercase. So you don't have to change this unless you want to, but variables should have a lowercase letter to start. And the reason for that will become apparent when we get into objects. Objects are start with a capital letter. And so if you follow that standard, because the computer doesn't care, it'll work either way, but if you follow that standard, it'll make your code much easier to read for you and for anyone else that needs to look at it, like me. So if you had a longer variable, you capitalize every word after the first. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so we're adding this, and then we're adding %1. I think I put this in the wrong place. So I just need a plus here. Don't need these files. So we can increase the space here. These lines, when they get longer, they're more confusing when they wrap around. Very hard to read. So if you can, I recommend making yourself enough space to actually see your code. You can zoom in and out too. That might help. Okay, so I'm going to grab this. So this is everything between BR and the 2 fixed. Okay. So I'll just stick that. 1. And in Replit, I think you can do this. I'm going to hold Control and click another spot, and then I can just do this. Just put it in all the places. There's all kinds of tricks. This early on, if you don't have experience with programming, if you see me do something and you want to know how to do it, all you have to do is ask. I'll try to remember to explain it. There's 1.5 million things that you learn. As you do this more, it really is. You become proficient in the language and understanding. Okay. So now we have to calculate those percents. I think you're not doing that yet. So you're adding them all together here. Okay? You're calculating that total. To calculate the percent, all you have to do is take the value. So you're doing rent first. We do rent divided by total. Okay, let's see what that looks like first. All right, I broke it. Okay, it says BR is not defined. Okay. So, oh, did I do that? No. Okay. Be honest with me, guys. Is this painful to watch? Okay, so this says undefined, which means, I think, because total was created without a value, it's defaulting to string data type, I think. So if we start it with a 0, let's see if it defaults to integer. All right, nope. Okay, let's open this in another window and we can actually see, here's some troubleshooting tips. These are invaluable. So 1, 1, 1, 1. We come in here, hit F12 to open the developer tools. Okay, and then go into the console and we can say console.log. This is a command that allows you to print to the console. So we're going to put the name of the variable. It says undefined. Okay. Let's try. Let me check if you guys have figured it out yet. Okay. I wonder if it's because percent. Oh, it wasn't total. It was. These also need to be. So when you create the variable name, that's called declaring the variable. So you're reserving that name for the program. When you initialize a variable, that is where you give it an initial value, and that sets its data type. These zeros right here, they're called integer literals. They're a literal, the value of 0. If you want to make it a string that has the character 0, what would you do? You'd need to put quotes. Whoop. And in here, I think if you select something and you put quotes, it puts it around it for you. Save a little time. This would be the string of 0. So let me leave this one as the string and we'll see what happens. Actually, did I change those percents down here? Okay, did I change those percents in here? Sorry. Bear with me here. Yeah, okay. 1, 2, okay, 3, 4. All right, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so it worked. I'm not sure why the first one worked because I set it to the character 0. But okay. One thing that's both good and bad about JavaScript, especially when it's processed by a browser, is a lot of the rules are super lax, which is unfortunate because the code doesn't always work the way you think it should, so it takes a little trial and error. But anyway, it shouldn't be 0, right? It should be 25%. Oh, you know what it is. It's 0.25. So, and it's cutting off the thing, the decimals. So I'll fix the first one, and then I think you guys can figure out the rest. Okay, so all we have to do is put the 2 fixed, set that to 1, because it wanted 1 decimal place on the percent, I think. Okay, and then instead of putting that, actually, let's do this. %1, since it's 0.25, how do I get 25 out of that? I multiply it by 100. Okay, let's see that. Man. Oh, that's what I was looking for. I knew I forgot to put those in there somewhere. Okay, anyway. There it is, 25, and we can put, you know, % on there like this. Building strings is important in understanding how that works, so get lots of experience on that. So there's the 25%. So hopefully that helps. So here you're doing your calculations, and you need to do your calculations before the output. So yeah, and you have this compute total, perfect, and display results in that order. You could calculate one, print it out, calculate one, print it out. But to keep more organized, if I'm using, you know, a bunch of variables in this one output, I should be making sure before I do this they're calculated, or else I'll run into that NA problem. Or what's happening here is these are actually just staying 0 because that's what I set them at the beginning. So, okay. If I take away the times 100, I want to know if... Oh, I didn't show you the 2. Okay, so if we do this, this will actually evaluate to a new number. And then from there, I believe we can just do this. So put a .2 fixed on the result of this equation or expression. Sorry, not an equation. Okay. There's the 2 decimal places, and I wanted to see if this would, well, kind of know that it'll be 0.25, don't we? Okay. So anyway, we wanted it 1, and if you want to display, if you calculate out a %, it's going to be a decimal. So if you want it to display as an integer or whole numbers, not decimals, you need to multiply it by 100. Okay. Anyway, they like to use math in these exercises, even though it's fairly simple math, because it's illustrating the strength of, you know, computer programming and using a computer to solve problems. It's much faster. Okay, well, let's see if you guys are bored in here. Oh, thanks, Alex. Okay, I've got it. Yeah, so again, if you guys ever spend more than an hour on something like this, Because if you enjoy this, you will get to the point where if you get a problem and you know enough about things that you're like, I should be able to figure this out, you might spend like upwards of 8 hours trying to solve a problem, just looking up and trying things over and over again. I really don't want you guys to have to do that when you're in this class. Outside of this class, I mean, since you've been my student, you can always contact me if you need anything, but make sure you contact me if you're stuck and it's taking you more than an hour to do it, because I really don't want you wasting your time. Okay. It looks like there's 6 people watching. Does anyone else have questions? Okay. I'm not sure if we finished our PowerPoint. First of all, are there PowerPoints? I think there were. I should have rewatched the last video. Where are we in this class? Okay, because we missed last time because of Labor Day. I really should have made another video, but I don't think you guys mind the extra time right now, right? Okay. Let's take a look at this, and I just want to touch on some things, some of the more complicated things in here. And as we're looking at things, I'll randomly tell you, remind you of what it is, if I think it's important. If you see something and you want to know more about it, just ask in the chat or email me. Okay. Wow, I don't even think we started this, did we? Okay. So I wanted to show you another cool thing. See if I can find it. And so this thing I'm going to show you is something that you could actually build if you complete the programming program. Right. Okay, wow. So this is let's see, I gotta pull it onto the window here. I'm trying to be more cognizant of what I'm showing you, so I'm not talking and you can't see anything. Okay. Anyway, there's a bunch of these sites, and I'm just gonna go with this one for now. But if one of you can find, there is a website that has a list of the most popular programming language on GitHub over every month, and the results of what I saw were a little bit different, but Python, and what are these percents? What is this based on? Oh, how language tutorials are searched. Okay. So this is all what languages have been searched the most. So here for this class, JavaScript is number 3. Some of you might be in my Python class. If you're not, the reason this is so popular is Python is one of the simplest programming languages to do simple things with. So if you just need to calculate numbers, a lot of people doing research use Python to run their statistical data analysis and stuff like that, because you just have to type it in and tell it what to do, and it will do it. You don't have to worry about a lot of things. So anyway, I wanted to show you this so you know learning JavaScript is a very valuable skill. You know what? This is based on Google searches. it's probably Python is the most searched just because it's the most accessible. It doesn't have to do with anything else. Where can I find this? Okay. Most popular languages on GitHub. Okay, it's not this. Welcome to Logic, the class where you watch me search Google. There we go. Is this it? Okay, anyway, if one of you guys can find it. Someone showed it to me. It was linked on Reddit, but they never shared me the link, so anyway. So this one is saying JavaScript ranks first on the 10 most active programming languages in GitHub. The thing that I saw, JavaScript and Python are both like, they're ahead of the pack. So the reason is JavaScript is so versatile, and it's just like a half step above Python. Much more technical than Python, has a ton more rules, but it's a lot more powerful because you can use HTML and CSS as a user interface with it. It's embedded, so you can put it right in the file or create its own file. A browser can run it. JavaScript is run on your machine. The code uses your machine. So if you visit a website that uses JavaScript for whatever you're doing, your machine is processing that. So, and you can also see the code. All right. Anyway, this is a good language to learn. Okay. None of this, well, some of this is important. Okay, so if this is your first programming class, or maybe you're in my HTML or my Python class, those are all like the earliest ones, the earliest programming or coding classes. Those all are languages that use something called an interpreter. So when you write a program, the code is either going to be processed by a compiler, which processes all the code right away and creates a package of a binary package that'll the program will just run when you open it. Okay. Languages that use an interpreter, the code runs on the fly. So as you click on things, the code will run. And the problem with that, two things with that, it's a lot slower than compiled programs. So again, that's why Python is really good for small things. JavaScript's pretty good for small things too. Those use interpreters. Things like Java, C#. In the programming degree, you will use C#. It's one of the most modern languages in use right now. Has a ton of features. Another thing is compiled programs will tell you their errors, syntax errors ahead of time, where interpreters won't tell you there's an error until it actually interprets that line of code. So a little bit harder to debug interpreted languages. If you don't know how to use the tools, JavaScript is a nightmare to debug. But if you know how to use the tools built into the browser, you can be very quick about it. Being able to debug quickly is one of the most important things early on. It'll make this a lot more bearable, and those skills will be very useful for you in your actual job, for sure. And you'll notice as you do this more, you'll make less errors as you go. So, but you do need to make sure you understand the errors and how to fix them. Okay, anyway, that's what that is. So these are compiled languages down here, and you will see C#. Okay. Cut the program down to 3 languages recently. C#, JavaScript, and Python. If you know C#, Java is not that far of a leap. The thing with Java is it's cross-platform, so it doesn't matter if you're using a Mac or whatever, Windows or Linux. Java can be processed separately from independently of the architecture of your machine. Okay, so that's why it got really popular. All right, and the newest one. Okay, here's a little trivia thing for you. You know, here's C. You may have heard of these, you may have not. C++, and then C#, because it's like a musical sharp note. I think this works in JavaScript too. The plus plus is an increment operator. So let me show you this. Okay, I'll just delete this code. And we can do console.log. Where did I put that? Okay. Okay. So if we have a number, oh, here we go. I'll just use this one. If we have a number, like 1, we can store that in a variable. So let's call it C. So the first version of the C language was called C. Secondly, the new version of that, it's not very new anymore. I don't even think C# is that new. It's the newest. If I do this, okay, let's see what that comes out to. And then, why did it go to a sharp? Does anyone know? I'll never get your messages before I actually get to it, but does anybody know why it went from C++ to C#? It's kind of ridiculous. So it's actually just 2 sets of plus plus on top of each other. So it's like this. If I want to get to version 3, I use this C++. That'll take the number and increment it by 1. So up here, this will be 2. But if I do this, C++, should come out as 3. And you guys, I'm showing you all of my really bad habits here. Okay. So let's debug this one together. It's probably just not going to let me do this. This is the problem. Okay. Invalid left-hand side expression in postfix operation. That sometimes helps, but this is, it takes you a while to understand what these mean. Because it's usually just a typo you made, so the error it's causing doesn't always necessarily relate to what you did. You probably just made a typo. But the important thing is here, it's at the 4th line, 13th character. So 4th line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So right here, when it gets into here, it's not very happy. So let's see if I can do this. I don't think that'll work either. Okay, so we'll just do this. Here we go. So we'll do C equals C++. And C equals C++. What was that going to do, right? Okay. Maybe I got it backwards. Okay. So if you put the plus signs in front of the variable, it will do the math before displaying. If you put it after, it will change the number after displaying. And there are times when you will need both of those, and then there are times when it doesn't really matter. So just understanding the difference between those can be useful. Anyway, so all of that to say, I'm never going to get through all this, right? Nah. So if you guys do need to go, I plan to just keep talking. So if you don't have a class and you want to hang around, you can. If you need to go, when the class is over, you can. If you need to go now, you can. This will be recorded. So anyway, I'll keep rambling on. So C incremented by 1 is C++, and then to do 2 increments, you need 4 pluses. So the sharp is actually just 4 pluses put together. And I guess C# rolls off the tongue better than C+++++. So there are probably people that would have liked to name it that. All right. The generations of languages, I don't even know if I've heard of that before. That is not really all that important, I would say, to understand. We talked about that. Okay, so scripting languages doesn't run as a separate program. So it's ran by some other program. For example, for Python is ran by the Python interpreter. JavaScript, in our example, well, in the examples I showed today, are being interpreted by the browser. Okay. History of the internet. Basically, in a nutshell, university had a project. They wanted to send a message through a cable from one computer to another. They were successful, but as you know, academics aren't funded as well. But you know who is funded? The Department of Defense. When they found out someone had created a new form of communication, they said, "Take my money," and it exploded from there. Okay. Then the web was added eventually, so messages could send messages that could be interpreted by a browser, which is what, part of what we're doing here. Okay. That's, other than that, I don't know if anything. It's not really that interesting. You can go back in time before this, like history of the computer. That stuff's pretty interesting, actually, because if you understand how that works, it's really useful for debugging. Okay, but it's kind of a higher level thing. History of the internet, so you can see 1960s the internet existed, and then 1989 the internet, HTML was invented. Okay, and so there, there was 1993 was the first graphical browser. So I never had a computer in 1993. I would have been 5. I had a Nintendo, But in 1993, that doesn't seem like all that long ago, huh? But we're so used to graphical browsers too. Back in these days, computers weren't even graphical. Back here, okay. Yeah, so like I said before, the main use of JavaScript is interaction with websites. So that's very, very narrow description, okay? Websites, it does work on websites, but nowadays I prefer to call websites web applications because you can build a web application using JavaScript and HTML, okay? So you're not just making a website, okay? You can build a tool using it. Okay, anyway, boring stuff. All right. How many of you guys are in my 099 class? We still got 6 people watching. Anyone in the 099 class? I have like 12 classes, so it's hard for me to keep track of who's in what class. I'm glad Canvas keeps track of it for me. Okay. Anyway, if you're not in the 099 class, we actually specifically focus on these things. So you in this class, you're just using them as a cheap UI. So a super easy to program UI. Okay. Okay, and then this talks about how you set up a script. Now, I did want to show you guys. I'm not sure if it shows you in here. If it does, it's okay. I want to talk about this now. As you're doing your assignments, in this example here, you'll notice my JavaScript is in a script.js file, okay? So it's a separate file. How does the website, in this case, know to run this code? What ties them together? Okay, so take a look, because when you hit run, what in this HTML replit, when you hit run, the first thing it's going to do is interpret this index.html from top to bottom. You'll notice a lot of code is interpreted top to bottom. I have not encountered code that is not interpreted one line at a time from top to bottom. Okay, which helps with debugging to understand that. So anyway, in the index.html, this is all boilerplate stuff. And then right here, this is the important part. This is how you set the file to run, okay? So you put script, src for source, and then the file path, okay? In this case, it's the name of the file because they're in the same folder. If it was in a different folder, say, you'll see this commonly on websites, they have a JS folder, and that's where they store all their scripts that they're going to use, okay? If I put that in there, it can't find this. And I think if I open this and I hit F12, again, F12 is your best friend in this class anyway, it says I could not find script.js. Well, it's in that other folder, so we have to change the file path to recording, so it'll let you catch up once it gets a connection back in. Okay. Should hire someone to edit these videos for me. With everything else I'm doing, I try to cut off the blank space at the end or at the beginning, so okay. Sorry. I'm a beekeeper and I got stung right on my hairline and my forehead is completely swollen and itchy, so that's why I keep touching my face. Okay. So it printed out the 1, 2, 3. Anyway, why would you keep it in a separate file? So, a lot of reasons. One is if you include code in your HTML file, so you can also just you can add as many of these as you want. You do have to include, or do you? Let's see, console.log. Yeah. Let me put a closing script tag. The crazy thing, and if you know HTML, this may be, you may understand this. If not, the fact that you have to include the closing script tag even for, accessing another file is funny to me. Anyway, so we have another script here. Okay, so you can have multiple scripts. You can load in multiple files. What you want to do one thing in programming that you want to do is this idea of separation of concerns. And so on the highest level, that is, at least for JavaScript, and that's just organizing your code into files. Okay, you don't want it on the HTML because that will be every character you include of code in the HTML file will have to load or be transferred when someone visits the website, they're downloading that web page, they'll have to download that. So it makes the file bigger. And the programs we're creating are so small, though, it's insignificant. But those are example programs, just so you can kind of practice. Okay, but a real program could potentially be much larger, and larger the file is, the slower it's going to load. So if we off-put that code into a separate file, it will only be used when it's called here. So when this web page gets to this point, it's almost like the code in this file is just kind of copy and pasted into this spot. It's kind of how you can think of it. Okay. Now, we aren't doing it yet, but in our scripts, or in our exercises, we're going to be manipulating HTML. And so, why was that important? Why was that important? Okay. I need to rewind and check out what I just said. Okay. Anyway, you should separate out your code, and if you're writing a program in JavaScript to do something, it should do that one thing, and then if you need something else done, you should make that into a separate file. And that way, the pages only need to load the scripts when they need them, and people don't have to download more than they need, thereby speeding up your site, which is one of the biggest and most important things. It may have changed, but someone keeps track of or does research on load times versus retention. And so if your website takes longer than a half a second to load, a lot of people just leave. So especially if they try to use it more than just if it takes 2 to 3 seconds to load initially, but every time you click a link, people are going to leave. So every little thing you can do is important. Every bit and byte that you can save is very important. It's all about speed and efficiency. The computer will do literally anything you tell it. So if you tell it to, go to the top of the Empire State Building, but instead of going east to New York, I want you to go west around the world to New York. And the computer will just do it. Okay, and so what does that mean? How does that work into it? Well, when you're including all the code in here, or no, when you program something one way, the computer's not going to tell you whether that's the most efficient way to do it, is what I'm telling you. It'll just do it. So you have to learn the most efficient way. And trust me, these beginning programs you're doing, I'm not worried about efficiency when I grade it, but I will. Oh, good. A bunch of you are in 099. Okay. So you're going to see some overlap, and it'll be very helpful. Okay. I should stop looking at the chat in the middle of an idea, or middle of me talking. Anyway, the thing to take away is computers are dumb. They can count really fast, but they can't make any decisions on their own. Okay. Even the current level of artificial intelligence we have was created by a person, and the data that's fed into it to make it intelligent is chosen by a human. So it's influenced by human hands, and the decisions it's making are just a complicated compilation of way more data than a person could even process in their lifetime in milliseconds. So that's cool. Will artificial intelligence be the thing that saves mankind or the thing that destroys it? Everybody's waiting with bated breath to find out. Okay. I gotta continue on or I'm going to keep rambling. I love talking about artificial intelligence. And if you're unaware of it, look up, this is on Wikipedia, look up the singularity. It's kind of a cool idea. We may be in a post-apocalyptic world soon. Especially if you like the movie Terminator. Terminator 2 is the best one, though. I recommend it if you haven't seen it. I think it holds up. All right. So we know all that. Okay, tags and attributes. You can read that. If you're in my 099, there's 2 of the 3 things that I repeat over and over again. Even in this class, you can't escape the tags and attributes. What was the third one, though? Right? Let's see if you can remember that. Okay. Why do they tell you this? I don't know. You don't need to memorize this. But it is important later. JavaScript is considered an object-oriented language, which means you can follow a very efficient framework. You don't have to, though. You can write it line at a time, which is what we're doing here in the beginning. Writing code a line at a time makes it extremely difficult to reuse the code, which is super important for efficiency, and it makes it hard to change because it's usually super specific. When you use object-oriented programming, you kind of break everything up into something that doesn't even look like programming. Okay. We will use... Okay. So in this example, this is the document object. So we will be using objects, but we won't be creating our own objects for a while, I believe. All right. This document object is automatically created by your browser when you load a web page. It contains all the data that's on the web page document, and it has methods which allow you to manipulate that. So here, what this is saying is the document object, I want to use its write method, and I know this is a method. What you can expect here would be variables, which are called properties when they're of an object, or methods, which are just functions of an object. The way I know this is because the name has a parenthesis right after it. Methods and functions always have parentheses that allow you to pass in the arguments. Okay, even if the method or function does not have any arguments, you still have to put the parentheses. So that way, the computer knows you're talking about a method and not a variable. Okay. So if I don't think there's any tools in here that I can use. Okay. I should download this. All right. Now we can edit it. Anyway, let's take a look at this. Because in Replit, they have some, it's nice because it's a programming text editor. If I throw this code in here, we can see, I'm using the console object too. Also, I might have been wrong about the object thing. There are different standards for different programming languages, so all you have to do is look up the name of the language, programming standards. That'll tell you how they name the variables, how they do their indenting and spacing. What else is there? Oh, right, variable naming, object naming, syntax differences, important syntax differences. Because a lot of the, this plus plus thing here is in, I wonder if it's in Python 3, but it's in Java. It's in all the C languages. This is a very common operator to see in a programming language. Okay, console and document.write, or just document, these are specific to the browser that you're in. Okay, and so that's why when I say console.log, it prints out down here. And just so you're not confused, you don't have to use Replit to see the console. You can just hit F12 and you can open the console in these developer tools. That's really useful for it to be down there, huh? Let's go right now. There we go. Sorry about that. Bear with me here. Yeah, we don't really care what's new right now. We want to know what about the old stuff first. Oh, that's why it's doing that. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so here is the console output that you can see. One nice thing about the console is it's really good for debugging because it won't break whatever is on the page. So you can print out variable values so you know at what point what value they are. We'll look at more efficient ways to use that too, because there is a very powerful tool. Oh, document.write, we want to see what that does. So that's going to put it in the browser window. And the other thing I want to show you is how you can see what your options are for methods and such. And also so there it is, it drew it on the web page here. All right. So for this, you can actually include some HTML. And so what happens here when you use document.write is it hands this off to it's interpreted by the JavaScript interpreter. When it gets to document.write, it feeds this code, h1 variable 1, h1, into the HTML processor, and that's why it shows up on the screen. So multiple steps there. That'll happen for you in the background. This is why this is a popular programming language, because the internet's popular and it is fairly powerful. Okay, so that variable 1 is showing. So when you're using an object, let's see if they have this. I might have to switch to a JavaScript one real quick to show you guys this. REPL, JS. All right. Okay. And so if I do console dot, okay, maybe there's a hotkey for this. There we go. I might have turned, oh, I actually turned mine off because I found it annoying. All right, there we go. Yeah, there are settings in here if you like to work at night. This one is an eye saver for sure. And since we're not on a projector, I can use this. And you guys can still see it, hopefully. And this way, if you watch this video at night, it won't burn your eyes out. Okay. So now if I do console dot, what this is showing me is there is an XML file that's in Replit that tells it what all the built-in methods of JavaScript are and the objects. So if you're using a text editor that has this, I recommend doing it, especially in the beginning. It's awesome because memorizing the syntax is a nightmare. You can just type it and put a dot, and it'll show you, all right, all the methods. So they're the purple cubes, and it says it here, method. And then if you click I think it'll expand this. It says console.assert. You have to provide it with a true or false value, which is called a Boolean value. And you have to provide a string, and you have to provide, it looks like, any array. Okay, I've never used that, so I don't know what it does. It's probably, here's my guess. It looks at an array, which we haven't talked about yet. It's basically a variable that can hold multiple values. But it's a little more than that, but we'll get to it. Anyway, I think what it does is it takes a list of values, and then if a value evaluates to true, it'll print out whatever string you put in as a message. So maybe we'll try that when we get closer to learning about those arrays. Okay, document is another, so console is useful. Document, you have to use it. You pretty much have to use this one a lot. And you can see it has a ton. These blue rectangular cube things, box-looking boxes, these are properties. So, okay. Let's try this. Document.content type. We can print that out in the console. Actually, I'll have to go back to here to do that. Let's do document.content type, and let's see what it prints out. So again, I've never used this one either, but I'm just showing you how you have to kind of explore a little bit yourself. And there's too much to learn at all. So you have to really, what you should focus on in these courses is getting a good foundation in the basics, not memorizing a bunch of things that'll probably change slightly later. So it's like learning a bike. Try unlearning riding a bike. It's much harder. So we paste this in. And we'll actually, let's put this to print out on the screen. So instead of printing this string, we'll just print this string. And it says, this is a text/HTML file. All right, cool. I'm honestly not sure what else it would be. Okay. So there's my rambling on that. All right. I think, okay. So if you encounter a question in the exercises that asks you to write something in pseudocode, don't write it in pseudocode. Pseudocode is something you should learn towards the end of knowing the basics. It doesn't make any sense to you at the beginning. So we're not going to learn it right now. So in a nutshell, anything can be pseudocode. I could say, write a program that asks me my name and prints it out. And the pseudocode for that would be ask for name, input, and then output name. Like that would be pseudocode. Okay, why is that useful? I can tell you why it's useful for now. One of the biggest problems in technology, any projects in technology, so developing software, hardware, anything, they have a very high failure rate. So you can spend a lot of money and years on a project that just fails. Using pseudocode, you can kind of plan. Planning it's a multi-step process, but planning is extremely undervalued. And so if you go straight to coding on anything in a professional environment, what's going to happen is you're basically be using trial and error. And you might write some code and then you'll encounter, this actually happens in programming all the time. You'll hit a block, you'll research it, you'll realize the way you've done it won't work, and you have to scrap that and start over, okay? That is very common in programming, okay? That's really hard for some people to do. You have to understand things that you work on could be just canceled by the company to save money. They could be, they could just be failed projects. So it's really important to plan, and you might, when writing pseudocode, you're just writing out the steps of what you want the program to do, basically, and you can do it as generally as I said, or you can break it down into more steps. The more specific you are, the more you're going to have to write, but it will be probably, you want to balance, So none of the exercises in this class need pseudocode, because it would literally be like 2 lines. But in a real application that people are actively working on, you're going to want to start by writing pseudocode so you can identify those things that'll cause you to start over before you spend a bunch of time troubleshooting and getting the wrong way to work. Okay? Which it'll happen anyway, but it always happens until you are like a genius, perfect programmer, which I don't even consider myself, because I'm more of a teacher. I know all this stuff, but I don't use it in a like a professional. I don't do it professionally, programming. So and you may ask, well, that's fine, but I guess I would prefer someone with more experience actually in the field. Well, I do have an advisory council of maybe 12 programmers from SSI, Smart out of Effingham, Patterson, all the big companies around this area. We meet and stay in touch throughout the year. And so I run things by them, and they tell me the newest stuff, and I include it in the class. So it's not like I'm just guessing. Here's the thing. Any class you take, unless you know the material already, you don't know if what they're teaching you is actually useful. But the material I'm teaching and the things I'm going to point out are important are because people that do work in the field and that I have a professional relationship with have told me this is what we want in someone that we would hire. So that's why my classes are very loose. They're project-based. I hate memorization because it is not, memorization is going to help you so little in programming. What's going to help you is working on your critical problem solving skills, which easier said than done. Okay. This is a weird question, but are any of you guys super interested in math or fans of puzzles? Those are useful things. The math thing is for very complicated programming, very high level programming, but okay. I'm just gonna not finish a lot of my thoughts if they're rambling. If it's important stuff, I'll make sure to say it. Okay. Okay. Include your semicolons. You may have noticed sometimes I forget them. Some language, I guess most languages use them. Python does not. It's just a way so you can signal the computer, hey, I'm done with this line of code, and you can start on the next one. So just saying, it's like some kind of telegram. Beep, 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 beep. Stop. I am coming to visit. Stop. Make sure you prepare. Stop. Like that. The semicolon is the stop. The computer goes zzz, stop, zzz, stop. Anyway, so with JavaScript you don't have to include those. And why you don't is because it's either Chrome or JavaScript or both. Just put them in for you afterwards. So it's a really good thing to include these, because if there is any kind of confusion by the computer about when the line ends, it'll just break everything. The other thing is because of search engine optimization, which I think I talked about in the 099 class, but some people believe to get your website higher on Google and higher in Google search results, which directly translates into, if you make it to the front page, a lot of money. If you make it to the second page, maybe you'll get some money. Past that, you may as well not have a website. Anyway, proper coding standards may be analyzed by the Google web crawlers that read your page, and so you may lose points because you didn't include semicolons. Now, that's just a total guess. Search engine optimization is a complete guess. Some things are probably obvious, like if your page doesn't load, they probably may not even include it. Anyway, okay. They're showing you how to use Notepad. Okay, it's good to know how to use Notepad. Like I said earlier, Notepad, Notepad++. Another one, I'll post these in the chat so I can actually use this thing, right? And then I'll see what you guys are saying. All right. So you already have Notepad if you have a Windows machine. There's a text editor for Macs you can use. If you're using a Mac, I think the best one is brackets. Actually, why am I typing it in chat? I can just show you. Okay. So this is a really good text editor for mostly CSS and HTML. Not bad for JavaScript either. Okay. But it has a lot of features for CSS and HTML. And I know, pretty sure it has Mac support. So if we go to download, should see an option for that. Does anyone in here have a Mac, primarily work on a Mac? Web developers like to use Macs. anymore with virtual machines. You can just have one computer and just load whatever image you want. Okay, nope, that's just going to download the one I need. Oh, here we go, other downloads. All right. Yeah, Mac and Windows users. Okay, so you would just download the right one there. It should auto-detect for you. So that's a good one. If you like text editors, check that one out for sure. It has a ton of awesome HTML and CSS features. The other one, this is probably the leading text editor for programmers. Okay, it's called Visual Studio Code. It's awesome, it's free. It has so much support because so many people are using it that it actually has a plugin library. So you can do all kinds of awesome stuff. You can get, you know, debuggers. You can get all kinds linters. Just I'm trying to think of what add-ons I've used. There's just so many for, you know, every application. But this has a lot of cool coding features just based on this picture. You know, it has the dark theme, which is almost required if you work at night. You can have multiple files open. It doesn't show it over here, but it actually opens the directory of your program so you can see all the files for that and quickly switch between them. It has, oh, there's an add-on for GitHub support, so you can use version control software on your project. Okay, so we'll go into more detail about that when we need to. Those are things you can Google if you want, if you're bored, I guess. It has this nice picture of your whole code document because it can get pretty long, so you can kind of click in there and jump up and down. It keeps track of where the lines you changed last. Anyway, my favorite text editor for pretty much anything. I think I would use brackets for if I was just using HTML and CSS, but that's so rare anymore to do that. I mean, you'll do it in the 099 class, and the reason you do that is because that gives you hands-on experience with HTML. Now, I'll be honest with you, most modern websites are built using something called a web framework. And those web frameworks are programmed in Python or C#. I need to close my eyes when I'm talking. What was I saying? Oh, right, using HTML. It's a good experience because if you know how it works, you're going to be primarily working with HTML using JavaScript. Well, anyway, those web frameworks, they build the HTML for you, which is amazing. Basically, what's happened is we've got to the point where everyone's figured out the best way websites should be, and so they've created a web framework with all of those standards built in, so you don't have to research what the best way to do this is or that is. You just tell it to do it and it does it, as long as you know C#, which is one of the strictest languages. If you learn Python and JavaScript first, it's going to be kind of rough to learn C#. It's still that way the other way around. If you learn one programming language, JavaScript's awesome. It's a really good programming language to learn first. It's easy and it translates up towards the other more complicated languages and down to Python. So it'll make you ready for all of that stuff. Okay. Let's see. So that's talking about text editors, right? So here we have common mistakes. Okay. It's nice in Replit because you can see the color coding And once you learn the color coding, you'll be able to notice, hey, I see a color. It's literally like a second instinct that you'll learn. You'll just look at the code. You won't even read it. You'll just look at the code, and you'll see a color where it's not supposed to be. Okay, you'll get to that point if you keep doing these exercises and you understand to look for these colors. Okay, most of the time, when I was in the classroom, when we're in the classroom, I would go around to the computers and check people's code. If it didn't automatically fix when I walked near them, it was usually a typo, which usually changes the color of things. So where could I do that? Here. So if I forgot to do, whoops, what button did I just press? If I forgot to put an open parenthesis here, it thinks that write document is an object of document, and content type is a property of the write document object, which is within the document object, which is not what we wanted. So anyway, write was write. We know is a method, so it should be purple. Okay, you'll get used to those. All right, I was going to look at your questions here. Oh, favorite framework, Python Flask, Python's Flask, and that is the class, that's web scripting 2, is learning Python Flask. It'll be your first introduction to, if you take it, it'll be your first introduction to web frameworks, sorry. Anyway, it's very, for web frameworks, calling a web framework light is kind of an oxymoron, but of the web frameworks, Flask is probably the simplest and has the least overhead. What it is you write Python code that generates HTML code. So when someone visits your website, they don't download a file from your server. Python Flask grabs that request and it gets fed in through Python Flask. So whatever address they go to, Python Flask has code written for that address, and it will use that code to generate a web page and send that to the person. So that allows you to have dynamic web pages. So if I go to Canvas and I look at my account page, it has all of my information in it. If you go to your account page, it goes to your information. So that web page is just a template that web framework uses, and then it pulls your data from a database and just puts that in the web page. So if any of you guys are in my database class, that is also extremely useful for this. Okay. Here we are in the first and simplest programming class. I'm already telling you about the most complicated stuff that you'll do, so don't get scared away. It's stepping stones, it really is. Okay. The other thing is about pseudocode. I don't know if there's actually a standard. Just describing what you want the program to do is pseudocode. So they make a big deal about it. If you interview for a programming job, one common thing they like to do is ask you a programming question, a programming problem. So something like, if I have a list of random numbers and you want to sort them by reverse numerical value, write code for that. And at that point, if they want you to write in a language you don't know, you can tell them, okay, and then just do it in pseudocode, because pseudocode is one level above programming. If you write down the pseudocode for a program, you can give that to any person with any programming language, and they can interpret that into that language. So it's kind of a blueprint that is platform. It's not locked to one platform. But again, kind of writing it for these little programs is kind of a waste of time. Okay. It's like, oh, you don't have to declare variables in your pseudocode. That's right, because you would just say, store this value. You wouldn't even have to tell it what variable. Whoever's programming it would get to decide the name of the variable. Okay. Okay. Whoa. Okay. I wasn't looking at the time here. Let's talk about what I want you guys to do next. I actually was supposed to start my stream for the other class at 2:30, but I'll just finish this up and go into there. It'd be funny. I think some people subscribe to me, so some of my students in that class might come in here. Okay. So the assignment, the last assignment, Chapter 2 multiple choice, September 17th. Okay, it looks like I had... Oh, it's one problem per date. Okay, so I guess just keep following the due dates here. So if you get done with all of the Chapter 2 stuff, feel free to move on to, it looks like we're skipping to Chapter 4 here. So you could take a look at that in the book. Oh, or take a look at the PowerPoints. And, you know, you're always allowed to work ahead on this stuff if you want. If you are the kind of person that wants to learn more than the basics, if you get done or you get far ahead and you want more like practice with a little more complicated problems to kind of make you think, just ask. I'll probably post that. I have a website with some really cool programming problems on it. And you get to create an account and submit your solution. And if it solves the problem, you get points. And they rank the problems by difficulty based on how many people have been able to solve it. For this class, there's some of the easier, saying there are easy ones. I think I tried the easiest one, and that they said was the easiest, and I had to give up at some point. But I did have students in another section. 3 of them teamed up to solve one of the problems, and they actually got it, which was really cool. So if you do want to be in this field, here I am, I'm like, I need to go. And I'm still rambling. Okay, well, I forgot what I was going to say anyway. So, I'm going to stop the stream here, and then I'm going to get into that other class. And you guys can move ahead if you want. Alex, I guess you're all caught up, so you can just hang out for a week or so, or work ahead. It's up to you. Thank you guys, too, for showing up. Even if I just have one person in here, when I record videos by myself, it's so different. But even if I have just one person watching, it just makes me way more efficient. Okay. So I'll see you guys. We'll probably look at Chapter 4 stuff next live stream. I'm going to try to ramble less. All right. So be thinking of any questions, and email me if you need any help. I did have a Zoom call with one student to help him get started, so If you need one-on-one help, we can totally do that. You don't have to communicate through just email, which makes things slow. Oh yeah, what is that website? Okay. I'll just post that on Canvas now. If I can spell. All right. Here it is, Project Euler. So these problems are more about creating algorithms that will solve a problem, which to me is the pinnacle of computer programming. In the class, we're mostly building and manipulating a UI. We're not really utilizing computer science, but for these problems, you have to utilize computer science. So you might have to do research on things. Okay, some of these easy ones are things that I have done. Okay, so you can start at the bottom and work your way up, or you can skip ahead. This one, there's something about longest path. Oh, no. I really want to show you this one, even though I'm supposed to go. Oh, you know what? If you're, oh, I'm on the wrong window here. Sorry about that, guys. Guys and gals. Okay. So it's projecteuler.net. I'm going to post this on Canvas, and you don't have to register to do the problems, but I think it's kind of fun. I think I have a score of 0 because I never finished the one I started, but the points don't really mean anything. They just make you feel better or make you feel worse if you have 0. Okay, so I'm just going to put this in important information. Extra challenge problems. Now, you know, at this point in the class, you may not have the basic tools yet to even attempt some of these problems, but it won't take long for you to get to that point. Okay. Wow, the way she built this class is so different than the way I do it. Okay. Extra challenge problems. And you guys get an inside look at how fun it is to use Canvas as a learning management software from the back end. Now, it's the best one I've ever used, but they're still a bit clunky. Okay, so put that in there. So you guys can click that if you want to look. Okay, so let's look at give us on level 2. Here we go. I think it's this one. Okay, so here's my example of what an extra challenge problem would look like. Okay. All right. Given any triangle of numbers like this, you have to write a program that will tell you by going down through the triangle what path will give you the largest sum. So you have to write an algorithm that can read in, you know, numbers into such a structure that you can understand how they would stack. You know, you're not going to, you're going to have to store these as integers. but you need some way to know that this is the top, this is the second row, these are on the third row in this order. So with the tools you have, I think this is possible, but it would be very difficult because you need to be able to use loops and you need to be able to use arrays. Probably arrays would make it a lot easier. Anyway, so that would be like a problem that I would assign you after we got the basics down, or not assign you, but expect you to be able to work on. This first one is a very common programming question in interviews because it's just complicated enough to trip people up. So, you have to write a program that's going to look at every number between 0 and 1,000 and calculate the sum of any numbers that can be divided by 3 or 5 so if we did 1 to 10, 3 is evenly divisible by 3. 5 is not, but it's divisible by 5. 6 is divisible by 3 evenly. 9 is, so you get the idea. But you have to do every number between 0 and 1,000. Or 1 and 1,000, I guess. Either way would be fine. And then you have to add up all the results of those numbers together. So this wouldn't be that difficult, I don't think. You would need a loop, though. Pretty much any algorithm, you're going to need a loop. Unless someone finds, like, some weird, efficient way to do it. A lot of artificial intelligence these days is discovering solutions to things that we would have to stumble upon. We would never be able to realize what this thing has found. AI, detecting cancer cells, even creating new recipes. It's a computer, it can't taste. But cooking and food taste is just chemistry. So you feed it in all your chemistry knowledge about what things taste good and what combinations, and it will create new recipes. And it's been quite successful at coming up with stuff that we've never tried before, which is like the weirdest application of artificial intelligence. And you can find there's a computer that played Jeopardy. That's is it IBM's Watson, I think. So, okay. Anyway, I should post that video. All right, I'm going to stop now. Oh, can I remove the HOA13 optional assignment? Let's see. That's in here. Oh, yeah. Has anyone done this yet? 3 people have submitted it. Okay, so hopefully those 3 people aren't mad if I turn that off. Always look at the bright side. Anything related to programming that you do while you're from now on, basically, anything is more practice. And this, you have to practice. don't think it's gonna let me turn it off. Yeah, it's not gonna let me turn it off. Was there an issue that you were having? Alex, was there a reason that you wanted me to remove that? I think it says optional, but it says 10 points. I'll just turn the points off. I'm not sure why I left this one in here. I'll have to regrade those submissions. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. I think Alex, if you, I'm not gonna penalize anyone for turning in something that's wrong. If you just submit an empty text box, it should fix that. And I'm not gonna. I'll know if you submit it. I'll know that as an empty text box, then it should.